Welcome to the Rocky Road Podcast, brought to you by Rockbusters, with your host, Dennis Wager. Dennis is a best-selling author and an expert in demolition, rock, and concrete breaking, as well as a professional blaster. He is also president of Rockbusters Incorporated, along with his son, Brian. On the podcast, you'll hear exciting stories of how these challenge types of rock and concrete jobs are done. You'll learn about the uses of expanding grout and explosive devices. But furthermore, you'll hear about some of the hurdles and struggles entrepreneurs and business owners have had along the way, how they got started, and how they broke through the obstacles and found the path to success. Along with that, some insight for young people and people wanting to get into the industry. So listen in. I hope you enjoy the show. Now, here is Dennis Wager.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Want to introduce my guest today, Jeremy Smith from GRA Global Rope Access and GRW Global Rope Works. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Thanks, great to be here, Dennis.
Yeah, appreciate it. So we've known each other for a long time, number of years. We've done business in different locations, different types of jobs, and maybe you want to just fill us in with a little bit of background about yourself and the company and tell us about it.
Yeah, so I've been working at height my whole life. I turned my passion of rock climbing into a career of work at height. For the last dozen or so years, I've been specifically focused on geohazard mitigation. I've been with Global Rope Access, now Global Rock Works, for about 15 years. And we've done a ton of different projects all across North America. Keeping rocks from falling from the sky and cleaning up the mess when they do, and other associated things.
Yeah, it's amazing what you guys do and the capabilities. You know, it's been a pleasure to work with you guys and seeing some of the stuff. You know, I know on the Eliho River, we did the blasting with you up there and everything. You had to zip line across all the guys and all the products and the stemming material, the drills, and then of course the weather conditions aren't always the nicest. It was middle of winter and started snowing and so on, freezing. But you got some tough guys.
Yeah, we definitely focus on difficult access, difficult to achieve projects. Generally, we get the call when your conventional contractor can't get in there, can't get the work done. We use the modern rope access techniques to get access, and we make it happen safely.
Yeah, I got a question for you. You know, that job in particular, it was a huge, gigantic boulder in the middle of a river, super fast flowing river. And, you know, when I got there, you guys had your rope, what do you call it? Your main head rope, I think it is, across the river. But how do you get it across in the first place?
For that particular project, we cheated and we dropped some guys on the other side with a helicopter, and we shot a pilot line across with, what is effectively a giant slingshot. And then we pulled across the highline ropes and secured them to anchorages that we constructed on the far side and tensioned it up, and that's how we were able to get access across the river.
Yeah, because it was a long haul up that gravel road to just get to the work site, and then I wondered how they got across to the other side of the river, so helicopter would make sense.
Sometimes the easiest way is the best way, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm realizing too in this industry is, sometimes, like you said, like when you can't get conventional equipment, excavators or what have you in there, then, you're kind of stuck with what is the other alternative or the best way, right? So I see the rope access as definitely got its place, and helicopters as well. Like there's a lot of remote access sites where you just can't get to them easy.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a key tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, so maybe you want to tell us a little bit more about the company and kind of the size of it. We were chatting earlier about now you've launched the GRW brand, and also you're in both U.S. and Canada, and maybe fill us in a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the company as a whole has been in business for about 17 years. Originally, we were a global company. We worked in China, Kyrgyzstan, Oman, Libya, and in the US and Canada, along with some other places. After a while, we compressed into just the USA and Canada. We kind of have two divisions in both countries. One is industrial rope access, where we work on NFL stadiums and Major League Soccer stadiums and towers and bridges. And then the other division, Global Rock Works, we do geohazard mitigation. So rock scaling, rock bolting, rock fence building, landslide cleanup, debris flow barriers, fish passage remediation, where we've done most of our work together, breaking rocks in sensitive areas, things of that nature. Yeah. And we use rope access techniques and whatnot to get where we need to go.
Yeah, the Seymour River was the other big one that we worked on with you, and that was pretty horrific slide there. A lot of rock choked up the river and blocked the salmon from spawning, so that was a major issue to deal with that.
Yeah. Another large one we did was the Big Bar landslide on the Fraser River about 5 years ago. You might recall there was just a massive landslide that blocked the fish passage, and it's a $50 billion industry, the salmon fishery. So that was another high-profile project, and we got on that one based on our experience on the Seymour and Elaho River and the things that we learned on those smaller projects.
Yeah, it's awesome. It always kind of carries you forward, your reputation, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
What about engineering? Like, I know, some jobs would be engineered, and some jobs I'm imagining would just be do your scaling and you pry out what's loose. But when does engineering get to be involved in it?
Quite a bit, really. Depending on what piece of infrastructure you're trying to protect and how much exposure you've got for that piece of infrastructure. For example, if it's a highway on a road, a busy highway, and there's a cliff there, you can expect just constantly people underneath that. So you need a permanent mitigation solution. For something like that, an engineer would be brought in to analyze the rockfall hazard and trajectory, the impact forces, and then they can recommend, whether it's a type of fencing or maybe it's just scaling is enough, or rock bolting, or some of the various other measures, rock removal, trim blasting, or expanding grout. So usually an engineer is involved, even if the end solution isn't engineered. They'll get involved to assess the hazard, assess the mitigation level required based on, the hazard and the exposure level. If it's a remote road that somebody's going to drive on once a year, you probably don't need to build $1 million fence there, right? But if it's in your mine and you've got your conveyor belt there that needs to be protected full time, then you definitely need to have some kind of permanent protection there that we know it's been calculated out to withstand whatever impact force is expected.
Sure. So would you say that you guys would typically work hand in hand with an engineer? Like, would it be a common practice? You'd be just scaling, which is something that's more kind of, what shows up at hand. And then if your guys happen to find some, like a bigger outcrop of rock that's looser than you had imagined, then you would call the engineer and get him involved at that point?
Yeah, it can vary wildly from walking into a project that's completely been designed and spec'd out, and then it's engineering oversight to make sure we install whatever has been proposed correctly. Or, sometimes things aren't as they seem, and as you knock off rocks, you find some larger ones, some bigger fractures. So we will work with engineers. So it's a little from column A, a little from column B. The engineers will always be involved. And sometimes it's just oversight, and sometimes it's full collaboration and reworking the plan and reworking, the mitigation proposed as we go.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, you could see if you get into like solid rock, it's pretty predictable. But if you get into stuff that, is more weathered or loose or fractured where you don't really notice it, that could get to be a problem pretty fast.
Yeah, usually if the rock's nice and solid, they don't call us in the first place.
Yeah, I got that. I should have thought of that one. Yeah, but for us, I mean, we do, because sometimes they just want, rid of the rock, or they want to put something there and the rock's in the way. Ours isn't
Absolutely.
really the mitigation as much as you guys.
Yeah, for sure.
So any challenging jobs that have come up or any kind of, struggles or hurdles that have, been in your career or the company's path that you guys have had to deal with, and how'd you get through it?
And every job is challenging. Uh, Again, that's why they call us. Probably the biggest and most impressive was the Fraser River landslide project. We were hired directly by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to just help them mitigate this. And basically, a 300-foot tall cliff, half of it collapsed into the river, and there was no access to the river base, and it was blocking the fish passage. So we were brought in along with hydrologists, geotechnical engineers, fisheries experts to try and find a way to safe out the cliff, make our way down to the river level, and do whatever we could to reestablish the fish passage. And
Hmm.
it was a major event, and multiple levels of government, multiple government organizations working hand in hand with private contractors, collaboratively to try to save the fish. Um,
Yeah, that was quite a disaster. How
so
long were you on that one for?
we were there for just short of a year. We worked directly for DFO for the first 6 or 7 months, and then the whole thing went out to tender, and we ended up working for Kiewit for another
Yeah.
4 months or so on that
Okay.
project. And we used every trick in the book on that one because it was such a varied project. Everything from high lines, like we discussed, rope access to make our way down the cliff, airbagging to knock off blocks on the slope,
Yeah.
uh, high explosives to widen the river, low velocity explosives to get rid of rocks, hydraulic rams to roll rocks out of the way to create fish passage.
Yep.
And we installed overhead canopy rockfall barriers to protect the workers, slope mesh,
Okay.
rock bolting, you name
Wow.
it. We
That's
used
cool.
every trick in the book on that one. Yeah.
So any new tricks you want to share?
We continue to learn new things and sharpen our tools. Right now, we're working on a pipeline project. They're twinning this pipeline, so there's a live pipeline that we're working with, and we're taking care of rocks that are, hanging over top of this thing and threatening it. So
Okay.
some of the work we're doing currently is, completely encompassing the rock with cable and high tensile steel netting. And then we're using expanding grout to break the rocks into very small pieces,
Yeah.
and taking them out one at a time so they don't impact the live pipeline.
Yeah, that's tricky. We did a job for Chevron years ago in the refinery, and they had a pipeline where it came from underground up to above ground, and they had a big concrete block that encased it. And they had to, also the same, they couldn't shut down the pipeline that was live, and they had to have us remove the concrete off of the pipe so they could repair it. And we did the same kind of thing. We just did a drill pattern. We removed the bulk of the concrete. You left a foot or so, up tight to the pipe, and then do some small holes and kind of gently take the rest off. And it works very well. Like for them, they were pretty concerned about it. They had, like fire standby and all the stuff. But we did it without any incident, so they're pretty happy.
Yeah, expanding grout is the perfect product for working close to infrastructure like that, or close to houses, like you guys do quite a
Yeah.
bit. There's no impact. It's easy to control the break pattern. There's no fire concern. There's no fly rock.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. It's
you
pretty
know,
easy. The only downfall to the grout is that you got to wait for the rock to break.
yeah, it can be a little bit unpredictable. You definitely need to be patient and careful um, around the expanding grout. Generally it does its thing within 12 hours or so, but
Yeah.
we still find that it's still alive. It's still doing stuff even
Yeah. So
after
we're
that.
gonna.
So you do need to be careful around it, particularly when you're working in the vertical realm where rocks can fall off and you've got that
Yeah.
stored energy. If it's down on the ground, it's, no big deal if it's still breaking.
Yeah, the
But,
grout does
but
actually work for like up to a couple of weeks. So the longer you
mhm,
leave it, the more it's going to keep working. It just creates more and more pressure every day. But
yeah,
yeah, sometimes it'll break in 2, 3 hours. Sometimes it'll break usually 24 hours. Most of the time we'll drill, and at the end of the shift, we'll pour it. And then the next morning you're able to break it out.
yeah, that's our standard methodology as well. And usually it's done the major part of the breaking and done what we needed it to do. Um, yeah, we just do need to be a little extra careful in our
Yeah.
three-dimensional world.
Yeah, now we have a new tool called Rock Demon, and it's a pneumatic splitter, like an air splitter. And it
Yeah.
works with, the old school feather and wedges,
Yep.
but it's got a shaft on the top where you slide on this air hammer.
Mhm.
And the air hammer is very light. And the wedges that we have like actually super big ones. They're 1.5 inch diameter by 2 feet long. And
Yeah.
you put, 2, 3, 4 of them in a row, and you can create a lot of pressure. And
I've got a couple of those.
oh, yeah. No, they're
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. We use them at Seymour, most recently, Seymour River Rock
Yeah.
Slide.
So we
Um,
use those a lot, and then we also have the hydraulic splitters. And now what we've started doing is building big diameter splitters. So we have a set that we're just getting in here now that's 6 inch diameter by
Oh,
4
wow.
feet tall, and 10 inch diameter by 5 feet tall.
Wow.
And we have like it's an independent hydraulic unit that runs them, and one hydraulic unit will run 6 splitter rods.
How much force do they push?
They put out 100, no, what is it? 1,200 tons per cylinder
Right.
times 6.
Yeah.
That's for the 10 inch. So the 6 inch is 500 tons.
Yeah. Amazing.
So we have them from that size down to 3.5 inch, and then the 2 inch ones are the Darda style, the wedge ones.
Yeah.
And then now we're also building a giant splitter to go on an excavator. So we're going to put that onto a new 215 excavator.
Right.
And this is a 5 inch diameter, and it's goes in a 6.5 foot deep hole. And it's got a rotation radio remote control rotator on it. It'll rotate 270 degrees, so you
Mhm.
can line up the direction of the split that you want.
Awesome.
And then we have excavator mounted drills now, so we can get in and drill the holes. You put in the big splitters and tear the rock apart. So we're stepping up into the next level of big work.
It is.
And we also want to hang on to our niche of the small detail work, because we like that. It's actually quite fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's great that you're getting some bigger and badder tools out there.
Yeah, well, it's like you're saying, like the world is changing, and it's just the rock breaking industry is slow to evolve, and the blasting industry is also slow to evolve. Like dynamite hasn't changed in the last 100 years.
Mhm.
And with the Royex that we sell, it's a deflagrating cartridge, and it's a different technology. It's safer and easier to use, but it's just still not really mainstream, right? So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely. Yeah, we've
yeah,
used the deflagrants on quite a few projects. It's starting to be more and more popular, particularly again close to infrastructure. Um,
yeah,
you know, sometimes rock breaking manually or with expanding grout, there's a time constraint, and again, it keeps working for several weeks, so there's some inaccuracy there. Whereas
yeah,
deflagrants, it happens, but we've used deflagrants in facilities within 6 feet of sensitive equipment.
yeah,
We've used some of the very small cartridges, the half-inch cartridges,
yeah,
and
yeah,
been able to kind of surgically break rocks with deflagrants
yeah.
in very, very tight circumstances.
So how do you decide which way to go? Like whether it's a cartridge or grout? What's the determination for you?
Yeah, so every situation is different, and I think we can all agree if it's no holds barred, nothing beats a stick of dynamite,
Yeah, no, for
you
sure,
know,
100%. Yeah,
right? There's nothing more efficient than
yeah, it's
drilling a
not a
couple
secret.
holes and putting a stick of dynamite down there. But
Yeah,
obviously, there's
yeah,
restrictions. You're close to another building, you're close to some other infrastructure, you're in a fish passage way where you don't want the high nitric acid load in the river, or you don't want the shock wave because it's going to bring down more rocks. So really it boils down to, the specific situation. And we've done everything from manual old school wedge and feathers to break rocks, right?
Yeah.
Expanding grout, hydraulic splitters,
Yeah.
pneumatic splitters,
Yeah.
deflagrants, explosives. We have airbags as well for sliding in cracks and breaking things off. So
Yeah.
it really comes down to experience and the limitations that you're dealing with on that specific project. And it's
Yeah.
just picking the right tool for the job.
Yeah. I think you're right. It always seems to come back to experience. Like that's what we do here a lot. Like with the way we operate now is like we reach North America. So we have now with technology, people just text us pictures or email us pictures and dimensions, and then we'll suggest the method and the product. Uh, but there is a lot of overlap. Like you could use maybe 2 or 3 different ways to do that job. And you just from basic knowledge and experience, you want to pick what you feel is the right way or the best way.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And again, it's not necessarily one tool that's going to complete the entire project. It's this rock right here. What's the best tool for that one? Well, what about that one over there? And
Yeah.
larger projects like the Fraser River one I was telling you about, we used literally every rock breaking tool there is.
Yeah.
Just depending on where we were and what we could get away with and what was safe and effective.
Yeah, for sure. We did a job in the Grand Canyon at the bottom of the canyon, and everything had to be flown in with a helicopter. So they flew in a mini excavator, an air compressor, all of the grout they flew in. And yeah, it was just like that's what you got to work with. So how do you do it, right? It's just
Mhm.
the thing. But we're also we have a job in San Diego coming up where there's a guy that has a ranch, and he has a great big like outcropping of rock just kind of jutting up straight out of the ground, and he wants to knock off the top 10 feet. So
Mhm.
it's say 30 some odd feet high, and he wants to build it into an outlook. So he wants us to make a flat surface like 20 feet up in the air. So we're
Mhm.
going to drill horizontally, and we'll shoot it with det cord, and then we'll drill from the top down and use Royex to break the top off because his
Mm.
house is about 20 feet away. So you don't want, stuff flying out his house.
Yeah.
And then for the top or for the bottom kind of layer to make it more, as flat as possible, we'll drill that, more of a tight drill pattern and use, Rock-X or expanding grout on that. So
Mhm.
it's like you said, kind of using all 3 methods to do that one job. But that's kind of what makes it fun too, right? You kind of bring it together and you say, "Oh, let's try this," or you might switch, in the middle if you find a better way, or the rocks, breaking a little bit, irregular or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that's the best part of the job is the problem solving, looking at these unique situations and using your experience to determine what's going to be the best path forward and sometimes consulting with other parties like yourself. We've had lots of conversations over the
Yeah,
years on what we should do in some sticky situations. And yeah, I love that problem solving and collaboration.
yeah, I do too. And what I really enjoy even about doing this podcast is now we have people like from other countries around the world that are joining in. We have a gentleman tomorrow from South Africa that uses expanding grout, and he's over there doing rock breaking the same way that we do here. We have a guy in Australia that does the same. He's a blaster. He uses grout and he uses splitters. He did a big boulder inside of a basement. We drilled horizontally and used 3 hydraulic splitters and cracked the top of the rock off. It's interesting to learn like different areas in the world. I mean, it sounds like you must have done that same when you were working in China and those other countries. There's different ways people use, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I feel really fortunate from having all these different work experiences over the years and the nature of our business. We've worked in so many different industries, oil and gas, mining, hydroelectric, transportation, your railways. We've worked in rivers, and we've also done all the civil construction and stadium construction. So we've seen all these different construction styles. We've worked in Canada, the US, overseas, the
Mhm.
different methodologies, and it makes the broad experience really helps you when you're planning the next job. It's like, oh, this was kind of like that time down in Atlanta, or oh, you remember in Libya when we did this.
Yeah,
You know, it really helps a lot.
exactly. And I know even over in Australia, it's very common to have a saw on an excavator, where here in North America, nobody has a saw. Maybe the odd dimensional stone quarry for trimming ends or something like
Yeah,
that.
pretty rare.
Pretty rare, right? But yeah, also in Australia, like most excavators don't come with a thumb or a hydraulic thumb. They
Mhm.
just come with a bucket. So it's like, okay, it's
Yeah,
like, like news flash. Let's put this little piece.
yeah, makes it
Uh,
a lot more efficient when you're picking up
yeah,
big chunky stuff.
yeah. Like, how do you do it without a thumb?
Yeah.
All these years, it's just, yeah. So that's what I enjoy. I mean, I noticed that I was on the board of directors for the Demolition Association, and that was really what I got out of that the most. That was a North America wide association. And when you go to other places like New York or Oregon or what have you, you're dealing with other contractors that are not your competition, and they're willing to share their stories and their ways of how they do things, right? So you might say, "Oh, I got this big job I'm bidding, and it's really, out of my league or new for me." But you just go ask somebody over there, and they go, "Yeah, this is how you do it. It's no problem." And the community and the mentorship is really valuable.
Yeah, we sit on the Association of Geohazard Professionals, which is a bunch of companies like ours that do the actual work out in the field, a bunch of the supplier companies that provide the materials that we'll be installing, and then geotechnical engineers that are designing and specifying things. So you get kind of the three key parties together and put our
Hmm,
heads together, and
interesting.
yeah, we're pushing the market forward and trying to come up with more efficient and safe methodologies to get these things done.
Yeah, we should chat after the show and actually get that information from you, because I'd be interested in joining that too. That sounds like a good one. Anywhere where people can get together and kind of, work and, improve things.
Absolutely, yeah. It is competitive out there in our industry, but generally most people are happy to talk shop with you nonetheless. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's also just being there if they need something, great. If they're fine, great. But, just getting involved is always good. So where do you see GRA and GRW going in the next few years? Any big goals or plans?
yeah, we're continuing to grow. Since inception, we've averaged about 25% growth per year. Um, it's basically been a sine wave, but it's been trending in the upwards direction.
Yeah.
Um, so we're continuing to seek out talented and motivated individuals that want to come on board, um, and that's helping drive our growth. Um, we've recently, in the last couple of years, we invested on a full time division down in the States, whereas we used to border hop quite a bit. Now we've actually got a shop down in Redmond, Oregon. We've got a full-time general manager, operations manager, project manager, procurement manager working out of that. So we're seeing huge growth down in the west coast of the United States. Canada, again, we continue to grow, building our name. We're contemplating moving further east, but we really don't have to.
Okay.
There's quite a lot of rocks in the west of Canada and
Yeah,
north
that's
of
for sure.
Canada.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and those markets are out there if we want to try to get into them, but there's a lot of work to be done in Western Canada and geohazard mitigation. So we're probably just
Yeah.
going to keep on growing where we're at, um, and maybe one day we'll look further east.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's awesome. Well, I think we're going to wrap things up, and I think that was great. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us here, and yeah, thanks very much.
Awesome, thanks, Dennis. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you would like to be a guest on a future episode and tell us your story, visit our website at www.rockbusters.com. If you have a project and would like to learn more about our products, or if you're interested in partnering with us and becoming a distributor, give us a call. Thanks again. We appreciate your support.